Hello and welcome everyone to the most evil channel on YouTube. Big Evil, Little Evil in the building. 1089 summary. This long summary spoilers have dropped. So that's exactly what we're going to be talking about today. Shout out to Readon from the Arlong Park forums. He posted this on his website as well. And Worst Gen. Thank you to him every week coming through with the long summary spoilers. But before we jump into it, you guys already know, like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell for the sickest One Piece theory videos on YouTube and the fastest spoiler videos on all of YouTube. Let's just jump straight into it. So the name of the chapter is Barricading Incident. There's a reader request in the cover about a cow waiter on two legs bringing Nami a love letter from Sanji that is hiding outside. The chapter starts at Fuchsia Village. Whoop Slap is reading about Garp in the newspaper. Whoop Slap trusts that Garp would be fine. Makino's son is laughing at Luffy's photo in the newspaper. It's a normal Luffy photo, not Gear 5. Makino talks with her son. Makino, you've grown to like Luffy Oni-chan, right? Cut to Mount Kalubo to Dadan's family base. We see Dadan's reaction to the news at the newspaper. She's in tears asking what Garp and Luffy are up to. Now there's a few things that go into this. For an example, let's start with Makino and her child. We know that Luffy left Fuchsia Village, his home village, Dawn Island, far before Makino was pregnant. We only learned that Makino was pregnant and had a baby through, I believe, one of the cover stories, seeing events around the world. I think it was like post Marineford. So this might confuse a lot of people. They're gonna wonder why Makino's child is laughing and, having this expression, this emotion towards Luffy when the child never even saw Luffy. Now, again, in the beginning of these spoilers, it also mentions Whoop Slap. In case you guys forgot, Whoop Slap is the older short guy that's the mayor of Dawn Island, the mayor of Fuchsia Village. So it's pretty cool for Oda to, throw him in here and show us, older Whoop Slap and have him see what Luffy's doing, especially when you think about him as a person. He was always against the idea of Luffy being a pirate, going out into sea and being like Shanks. He kind of had that same approach that Garp did. He just doesn't want to be affiliated with criminals like Luffy. But regardless, Oda gave us this context and I don't mind this at all. I like to see people's reactions all around the world when it comes to the events and the achievements of Luffy. And on to the next point, suddenly a huge earthquake starts. It's taking place 6 days after Leloucia Kingdom's destruction. There is a huge hole in the middle of the sea at the place that once was Leloucia Kingdom, just like the hole beneath Enies Lobby. We then cut to people all over the world feeling the earthquake. We can see Momonosuke in Wano Kuni, Uholsia in Kano Kuni, Iceberg in Water 7, Hina and Marine HQ, Imu and Marie Joie, Laboon in Twin Cape, some prisoners in Impel Down, citizens in Logtown, Ivankov in Kamabaka Queendom. We can see another random island too. The sea around the world rises by 1 meter, sinking many islands. Then back to Fuchsia Village, where villagers are looking at rising tides. Whoop Slap is looking too worried. Now I do feel like this is an instance of foreshadowing. We know that in One Piece, this is a very blue planet. There's a lot of oceans involved, and it seems like to a lot of readers that Atlantis will play a role in, One Piece at some point. Some people might argue that the idea of Atlantis was shown and explored through Fishman Island, and some people feel like Atlantis might play the role of not only Enies Lobby, what's in the hole, Laugh Tale, but maybe even something regarding the ancient kingdom. So again, it seems like this whole idea of sinking islands and rising the sea levels and rising tides, it seems to be some kind of foreshadowing. I'm under the impression or instinct that this has not been the first time that the world government has sunk islands. We even know through cover stories like Jinbei's cover story that he was traveling around the world and he actually went to an underground sunken city and found a poneglyph there. So again, it's pretty evident and it's very prevalent throughout the story that the world government likes hiding things. We even see like the people that are against the world government, such as Ohara's citizens, throw their books in the oceans and throw them in the lake to hide them. It seems like submerging stuff in water is very, very common. Think about ancient Wano as well, the ancient city in Wano. When we were learning about Pluton being underneath Wano, that was also sunken. So again, Oda's supplying this, this kind of foreshadowing, this kind of narrative of sinking the islands, whether it's Mother Flame, an ancient weapon or whatever. And I feel like this is going to lead into what happened to the ancient kingdom and most likely what happened to the affiliates and the friends of Joy Boy. On to the next point, cut to Egghead Island where marine battleships are surrounding the island. Kizaru destroys one of Vegapunk's sea-piece weapons with a normal beam, but Kizaru has not started the attack yet since he doesn't want to cause too much damage on the island. As much as they claim that there's not going to be destruction to the island, I feel like most people agree that there will be destruction on the island. Whether it's because Kizaru changes his mind, whether it's because the Gorosei goes a little too hard, the 4 vice admirals, the 100 warships, which is apparently double the amount of warships they had at Marineford, or maybe Zoro's gonna go wild, maybe Vegapunk just starts to destroy stuff, or even Luffy with his Gear 5 power starts destroying parts of the island, whether it's on purpose or inadvertently. So again, it's gonna seem, to me, it seems like Oda's trying to like play it a little safe, trying to make the reader feel like, oh oh, the island's gonna be perfect. But it's not gonna end that way. I do feel like this battle against a Gorosei who left Marijua, which is completely unprecedented, completely unheard of, is gonna lead to destruction. Not only that, I've addressed this many different times, but the Egghead Island arc, as well as its inhabitants and the island in general, shares way too many similarities to Ohara's residency, as well as the past of Ohara. We know that there's two different scholars between Egghead and Ohara. We know that the Gorosei and Cypher Pole considered Clover to know too much, and then they used the exact same phrasing to Vegapunk. They said he knows too much. We know that both of these islands were used for Void Century research. We could really go on all day, but I think this is going to lead into the destruction of Egghead Island. And honestly, because of this chapter, it kind of reaffirms another thought I have of Mother Flame, or Mother Frame, however you prefer to pronounce it, destroying Egghead Island. Not only did we see this used recently through chapter 1060, I believe, the destruction of Lelucia with this weapon, but now we're seeing it again, where Oda's reminding us how there's tides rising, there's earthquakes, everything's starting to sink. I feel like it's becoming increasingly obvious that they're going to use Mother Flame to eradicate Egghead Island, especially when you consider again that it's being used for taboo research. I feel like the world government is very overbearing, and it's almost like a helicopter parent where they're willing to go to the ends of the earth and just bring massive destruction if they see one thing that goes against their ideals and values. And what would that one thing be? Researching the Void Century. And not only that, but I could see a situation where Luffy might defeat Kizaru, maybe the Straw Hats even take down Saturn, and then Emu's pushed into a corner and they're like, all right, you know what? Fuck it. Just erase the whole island. I need everyone there dead. Why? Because that's how the world government in One Piece operates and thinks. On to the next point. Kizaru calls Sentomaru and asks him to surrender, but Sentomaru refuses. We see a little flashback panel of young Kizaru demonstrating his beam to young Vegapunk, and child Sentomaru. Kizaru is sitting on the ground while he is shooting beams with his finger to the air. Sentomaru continues talking. Sentomaru, Uncle Punk managed to develop Pacifista's lasers by doing research on your power. I can't believe you are the one coming to kill him. Now, if you guys watched my short summary spoiler video in regards to this chapter 1089 yesterday, you would see how I mentioned that, this vague detail we had yesterday was probably going to lead into talk about the Pacifistas. I said in yesterday's video that most likely this flashback of Sentomaru is going to play into the whole connection to, Sentomaru and Kizaru. We know at Sabaody that Sentomaru called Kizaru uncle, but it was more so in the Japanese context, in the Japanese Raws, of being like a Yakuza boss, of being some kind of like formal leader. And when they said uncle in the Japanese or in the English viz, it wasn't entirely accurate. It was sort of misleading. So that caused a lot of One Piece fans to argue that Sentomaru was quite literally related to Kizaru, which in my opinion, that seems to not be the case. It's simply from a formal leadership kind of context. But regardless, like how I said, I mentioned that maybe in this chapter, Sentomaru is going to express and have some kind of connection, some kind of relation to how the Pacifistas use Kizaru's beams. And I mentioned how we were going to learn about that, or I thought we were going to learn about that, which it seems to come true. It's pretty cool that Oda's showing us this. I like to see this deeper connection between Sentomaru and Vegapunk, as well as Sentomaru and Kizaru, being that Sentomaru's on the island in the first place. And I do believe Sentomaru is going to continue to rebel on Egghead Island, and I do believe that Sentomaru is going to be seen as an obstacle to not only the Marines, but the world government. And this might even result in the death of Sentomaru by the end of Egghead Island's arc. On to the next point. Unfortunately, I can't cover you from researching on Void Century charges, Sentomaru-kun. At the end of the day, I have to obey orders. We can see that around Egghead Island, there are 100 Marine battleships with 9 Vice Admirals and 30,000 Marine soldiers in total, as well as we see Saint Saturn and Kizaru. Doberman and Doll are part of the Vice Admirals, but there are new characters too. We saw some of them in chapter 1078. Again, this connects to what I was saying earlier. I mentioned how they were going to bring 100 warships to Egghead Island, which is exactly what we're learning here through these spoilers. And this is important because Marineford only had 50 Marine battleships. Yes, we can argue that they had the warlords and they had all 3 admirals. Yes, I get that. That's besides the point. I just find it like increasingly troubling that they have 100 warships. This is a very big deal because right now, like, who is on the Alliance? I guess you could argue Bonnie, Lucci, Kaku, and the Straw Hats. Like, they don't have that many options here. If Luffy has to go against the big bad, which in this case should be Saint Saturn, who fights Kizaru? Is it going to be a 2v1 where it's where it's Zoro and Sanji going against Kizaru? And we also have to take into account all the Seraphims there. Is Usopp going to be able to take down one of the 9 Vice Admirals? What about about Nami? Can she do it? It seems like there's so many obstacles in the front of the Straw Hats that it's inevitable this island's going to be destroyed. It's almost inevitable that there's going to be some kind of L or some kind of loss along the way, especially when you consider that Luffy barely even got in his hands on Gear 5. It happened not that long ago, like a week or two in the story. So even if you want to give him the benefit of the doubt on that and argue that Gear 5 is so overpowered and he's going to beat Saturn, well, what about the rest of the Straw Hats? How is what's going to happen if a Seraphim crosses paths with Usopp? What's going to happen when two Vice Admirals approach Brook? Because there seems to be a lot of outlets in terms of the antagonists and the villains of this arc. On to the next point. Cut to Egghead Island. York is calling Marijois, complaining why they tried to kill her along with the other Vegapunk. The Gorosei replies that they saw her as no different from the other Vegapunk. However, after Lelouch's incident, they have a new idea and they just might keep York to help them produce more Mother Flame weapons. It is revealed that York is the one that sent Mother Flame to the Gorosei. The power plant for producing them is on Egghead Island too. York made the Gorosei's promise to not hurt her or the research laboratory and to make her a Tenryu Budo, which is Celestial Dragon. The Gorosei agrees, and we see that Saturn and Kizaru are listening on the conversation too. Again, this is one of those predictions that I've been outspoken about in several streams, videos, spoiler videos, whatever, where it's like, it seems like it couldn't be Stella that would create Mother Flame. Not only have we seen Stella ourselves and we've seen the true Vegapunk, the mind, body, and the soul of Vegapunk, but we also have people like Dragon who knew Vegapunk for multiple decades. Dragon, the leader of the Revs, the father of the main character, this guy that's actively going against villainy, actively going against tyranny, and like these diabolical plans that the world government have. This is the same guy that co-signs Stella, the same guy that co-signs Vegapunk. So again, it seems like to me, like trying to portray Vegapunk, like Stella, as like this evil entity always seemed strange to me, especially like as time went on and we learned more about him. And that's why I said in several videos and several tweets and whatever, that it's most likely York that had her hands in the Mother Flame. Not only does she have this antagonistical approach right now, being that she has a gun to Stella's face, but we also know that she wants to become a Celestial Dragon. So if these Celestial Dragons, the world government suddenly has a new weapon on their hands, or just came out of the blue, and like we know in the Japanese Raws that Imu was theorizing that a Vegapunk made the weapon. It wasn't even a confirmation from Imu. It seems like there was something that Oda was setting up there that we and Imu didn't have the full picture. And that's why I made the guess of York creating the Mother Flame. So shout out to everyone else who agreed. Shout out to anyone who had the same kind of line of logic as me. We're taking a W together, baby. Yes, sir. Leave it down in the comments. Were you guys expecting York to make the Mother Flame weapon, or did you think it was Stella? Be honest. Leave it in the comments. On to the next point. However, in the final double thread of the chapter, we can see that York is making the call in tears with Zoro's sword at her neck. Usopp is the one setting up the Den Den Mushi. York ends the conversation screaming for help. York, save me from Luffy. The Gorosei, Saturn, and Kizaru are all shocked, since until then they are under the impression that York managed to defeat everyone using the Seraphim before calling them to Marijois. Now this point is a bit interesting. I'm not entirely sure how I feel about it, because if I'm not mistaken, wasn't Zoro kind of busy with the Seraphims? Wasn't he just fighting S-Hawk? I know that it was, I think it was Frankie and Robin, correct me in the comments if I'm wrong, that actually had the time to go downstairs and run around Egghead Island. I'm definitely sure Robin was one of them. So I was expecting York to be stopped by someone like Robin, someone like Frankie, Chopper. I forgot who it was exactly. Please forgive me. But apparently Zoro has his sword to her neck. Maybe they did stop her, and then like Zoro, you know, caught up and then found them and was like, oh, what's going on here? Puts his sword to York. This is something that I'm gonna actually have to see the chapter for. I feel like the leakers and like these guys that put out the spoilers, they can only put so much context into the long spoilers. I'm gonna have to see this for myself and see how it unfolded, because it might have also been like a mini little time skip, like a 30-minute time skip, where like Oda didn't show us the certain Straw Hats that approached York and initiated this moment of Zoro putting the sword to York's neck, and maybe Oda will throw it in. Maybe you have like a quick little 4-panel flashback where we could see Robin come into the room, stop York, and then the other Straw Hats follow behind. Like I expect some kind of logical answer for this. I don't think Oda's gonna randomly like pull Zoro or Luffy or all these guys out of a fight and suddenly have them in the same room as York? I'm expecting an answer. We'll just have to see when the full chapter arrives. And on to the final point. We can see that the rest of the Straw Hat crew, Bonnie, Lucci, and the real Vegapunk that's already packed his bag are eating and chilling behind York, Zoro, and Usopp. Nami, I get the entire situation now. Vegapunk, so that's how it is. Bonnie, this is really the barricading incident. Luffy, I don't really get it, but we just have to use her as a shield to escape, right? End the chapter. Break next week for weekly Shonen Jump. Now again, this is going to be something that I have to wait for the actual chapter for, because it does seem strange that the whole like trader thing on Egghead Island was wrapped up this quickly. Like, sure, there's going to be more context to it, being that like they explained how York had her hands in the Mother Flame, but it almost seems like they wrapped this up rather quickly. Like, last time we were at Egghead, if I'm not mistaken, York had her gun to Stella. Now the very next chapter coming back from Egghead, she's like wrapped up and all the Straw Hats have her captured. And like, we know that the Straw Hats are fighting the Seraphim. Like, I don't know, it seems like this is paced very quickly. Again, I'm willing to be patient and wait for the actual chapter. I'm sure it's going to clear up a lot of these confusions I have. But what do you guys think? Do you think Oda's rushing Egghead Island? Do you feel like this conclusion to, maybe not conclusion, but this conclusion to the York stuff, it makes sense? Do you think it's paced well? Do you guys even like the Yorkestrator? Because I feel like there's a lot of instances where York being on the west side of the island doesn't explain why the east side of the island blew up. I don't know how I feel about this trader stuff on Egghead as of now. It's weird, right? But with that being said, thank you guys so much for watching. Like, subscribe, hit the noti bell for more videos, the fastest spoiler videos on all of YouTube. Yeah, I rate this chapter based off these spoilers right now, maybe like a 9 out of 10, 8.75 out of 10. I'll have to wait for the full chapter, but peace.